I'm here, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, you're free to start.
Thank you, Brant. Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, January 21st, 2022. This is a virtual special budget workshop meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth. Happens to be budget meeting number 2. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. I'd like to take a roll call. Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Ed Chernowski.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills is here. We have a full complement of the mayor and commissioners are able to formally conduct business today. I'd like to also identify some staff that's attending and participating today. That would be City Manager Sharon Lynn, Public Works Superintendent Kevin Williams, Evan Miller, Project Coordinator, Bert Dukes of Department of Finance, and whoever else identifies himself at the time. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. I'd like to thank all those that are watching remotely. As you know, out of an abundance of caution because of the pandemic, we are going all virtual and have been all virtual for a while for the safety of staff and personnel and your favorite local officials. No public has registered to speak today, so won't be calling on anybody. Support documents, I like to remind the public that when they are available, they are embedded into the agenda. If you go to the city website, on the middle right of the page, you'll click on the portal and then search for this meeting date and meeting type, and you'll bring up the agenda. As far as support documents, the revised budget number 2 is embedded in there. And that's what we'll be referencing today. Also, there's an itinerary referenced in there that indicates for today, part of our focus is on public works, including the streets department, water, wastewater, building and grounds. And then we'll also talk about the Wilmington Baltimore Avenue Streetscape project. Just FYI, the next meeting, budget number 3 on the itinerary is where we invite in and talk about contributions from the fire department, the library, the museum, and Main Street. And then we'll go to departments of building and licensing and parks and recreation. As far as the next item of correspondence, that none has been identified. And with that, we'll get to the meat of this meeting, which is to discuss the draft budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023, including capital improvement program, an update of 5-year projects as presented by the city manager. And with that, I would like to remind everybody that when we start talking about individual line items, if we could cite the page number and the line item number and pause a little bit to give us time to search it out so that we're all on the same page, that would be appreciated. With that, I'll turn over the meeting to City Manager Sharon Lynn, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning, Commissioners. As you know, we have planned 4 to 6 budget meetings each year. We start out with a balanced budget, as we explained at the last meeting, and we make these presentations to you in order to go through each department and certainly explain anything to you. So this is, it's not necessarily a moving target, but it's something that's refined and refreshed after each meeting, and Mr. Dukes has done that. I think you're able to see in red some of the changes that were reflected and modified from the first version to this version. They're just slight changes, and I'll go over what they are. We had increased medical insurance for all departments. That's budgeted conservatively right now at 3%, a 3% increase. We don't know what the medical insurance is until into later into the budget, probably by the end of February, early March. So we predict a slight increase in there, a slight conservative increase. I know that in my time here, the medical insurance has not increased that much. However, we don't have any control of that, and we're relying on the state to get back to us on that. We've reached out to them, but we always put a conservative amount in there for an increase. Hopefully, the past couple of years have been flat, so hopefully we'll stay on that course. Also, we have an adjusted auto lease number based on new projected delivery dates for replacement vehicles, like everything else. There's been production lag times, and we've had issues in obtaining these vehicles, especially the police vehicles. But they are on order. They have been, and we hope to have these delivery dates in time, for certainly included in this budget. We have adjusted part-time salaries in several departments. We were still at press time, I'll say, with the first budget. We were still looking at part-time salaries and staffing and what we were planning to do with that. As you know, we've increased part-time salaries in several departments, and that includes the parking permit department, and that was mentioned during the last meeting, but several departments, including the seasonal police and other seasonal part-time employees have been increased. This is basically the, excuse me, the part-time salaries in the parking permit department. The capital budget was adjusted. We were waiting for some numbers to come in, so we've updated pricing and then removed a few items and added one other item. So basically that's, we can explain that to you when we get to the capital budget, but there were some adjustments made there. We added a part-time position for the Alderman Court. The Alderman has been I'll say, requesting this position for a couple of years. Through the pandemic, we didn't make that decision to bring that in, but now I think is the right time to do that. So we've added that part-time position. The debt service was adjusted to account for the new amortization schedule. I'm happy to say that today is the day that we'll be finalizing all of the refinancing for that, and Mr. Dukes can go over that if you would like. But today's the the day for the refinancing. We were on a call yesterday, and everything is in line to be signed over today. And the revenue in certain departments were adjusted, including the parking department, the rental tax, building permits, and appeals. The revenue was adjusted on, I'll say, on an as-needed basis as we go through the budget, and if we add something and we have a deficit, then we look at the revenue, which we very much budget conservatively. So that's what we adjust if we need to. So if there are any questions, I'd like to just actually start with the Public Works Department, follow our schedule to be on track with that, and have Mr. Williams go in first to, I'd say if we start in the wastewater department.
We can do it either way.
City manager.
Yes.
Sharon, Jay has a question. Commissioner Legree, go ahead.
We're just gonna do it.
I had a couple of questions, just little things. The medical insurance premiums, do they adjust up or down depending on how much we use them, or is that pretty much a general broad percentage up and down that just happens?
Yeah, so it's not necessarily based on the city's usage. This is a state plan, and we're tied to that within
Okay,
the state mandate.
without
So
me
it's not
having to
our own
go in
plan.
and
We're in
do
a,
the I'm
like,
sorry.
it's not our own plan. It's like we're in a group plan through the state, and we have been for many years.
Okay. Without me having to go in and do the calculations, could you give me kind of a ballpark on how much we have increased the part-time salaries for seasonal? You mentioned a couple of situations, but could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Certainly. It's below $20,000. I think that in the next budget, you'll see probably an addition to that as we have made some changes internally. But this budget mentions the increase in part-time salary to add that, but it's really less than $20,000.
So that's not much. Keep in mind, I'm really in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shanowski?
Thanks, Mayor. Sharon, you just mentioned some changes to the budget, this budget that, is dated January 10th from our last meeting, which was also a balanced budget at 0. So where, I guess if you could just briefly explain, there's the addition of the added medical expense, the part-time employees and everything else you just mentioned. Where was that offset by? I know the one savings you mentioned was the new debt service with the refinance, but where else offsets those changes?
Do you have the version with the red line version, I'll call it? Do you have that, commissioners?
Well, that is the budget revision number 2 that was embedded in today's agenda. And it's dated January 21, 2022, meeting number 2. So I think that's what we're utilizing for our support document today, Sharon.
Bert, do you want to speak to that?
Well,
These are the adjustments that were made, so I know when, I can say that when we, as we did, made these changes throughout, we come up with either a positive, in this case, a negative number. And then we take that negative number and we look at expenses and we go through the revenue line items one by one, and we're able to balance, bring back the balanced budget with slight increases in other sources of revenue or decreased expenses.
Commissioner, you'd asked the question about the changes. I have a detailed reconciliation. I didn't include it in this package. It's kind of a lengthy document, but basically what it does, it starts with the beginning balance at last meeting and then shows an ending balance and shows what all the items that made up those changes. So I can certainly share that with you. But I mean, on a high level note, I think that Sharon mentioned that there were changes in the debt service. There were some changes in the revenue. The transfer tax was now 1.7 million. It was previously 1.6 million. They're just basically probably 100 different detailed items that'll make up those changes. But I think most of those you'll see are in the personnel areas. Example, we added the part-time person and alderman. There was a change in the debt service. There were just quite a number. So if you want to have that reconciliation, I'll certainly send it your way.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for us to see, or a red line. I know you mentioned the red line, Sharon, but I don't see a red line. And I could very well have missed it, but I'm going off the hard copy that was placed in our boxes, and I don't see that being much different than what is on the portal or attached to the agenda. But yeah, if you could provide that, Bert, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, apologies for not having that. I thought that was in there. Is that?
It is.
It's,
It is in there.
Is.
yeah, the budget meeting number 2 document that's linked in the agenda, it's referred to, I guess, as a red line version, but you'll see that the numbers that were adjusted are highlighted in red. So if it was just a matter of the document not being printed in color, that might be why you don't see those figures highlighted in red. I will mention too, just broadly, that the capital improvement plan, we touched on that just briefly, that total budget actually decreased by about $235,000. So certainly we had some additional expenses with adjusting part-time salaries, medical insurance, things like that. The reduction in the capital improvement plan or capital budget certainly helped offset some of those additional expenses, and then adjustments were made to revenue in order to bring the budget balanced.
But we'll provide that for you.
Thank you.
Kevin? Go ahead, I'm
Jay,
sorry.
you still have your hand up. Did you want to say something again?
No, I'm sorry. I'm, no, I'm sorry. I'll lower my hand. Hold on.
And Ed, your hand, Ed's down. Commissioner Gossett and then Commissioner Gay.
Yeah, thank you. Just for clarification, the highlighted or red line version lines, that's just a change in the number. It doesn't necessarily mean it's up or down by red. It just indicates a change.
That's
Okay.
correct.
And on the vehicle leasing program, is it possible to get kind of a total breakout of that at some point in the future as to, I see some of them have gone up, and if it's being delayed, it doesn't make sense in my mind that the cost is going up if the vehicle delivery is delayed. So just kind of some explanation on that across the board would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure, I can, Commissioner, I can provide a spreadsheet basically breaking out those expenses. The auto lease change, why you'll see an increase this year, is because we had budgeted for, well, every time that we order a leased vehicle, typically our vehicles come or require upfits to be done, whether it's a utility body, lift gate, strobe lighting, things like that. So whenever we perform certain upgrades to the vehicles, we're required to put a percentage of that upfit down. So we have to pay that for the first year only. And then every year after that is just the monthly lease payments. So the challenge we ran into this year is with the delays in production, challenges with production of vehicles. A lot of the vehicles that we had ordered ordered this fiscal year, budgeted for the current fiscal year, have still not yet been delivered. So we had budgeted for, again, delivery of some of those vehicles this year. We haven't yet seen them, so we've needed to re-budget for them next year.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, thanks. I thought I had it with these red line changes because I had seen that last night, but Evan threw me off when he said that there were some changes in the capital budget of 200,000 resulting. I don't see that. Where is that? Where were those savings?
The final, the last couple pages of the budget document has the 5-year capital improvement
Yes.
plan in it.
I have that up on the screen right now, but I don't see changes in it.
Right, the changes, I don't think we called out the changes in that document. I just simply took the total capital budget that was presented on January 10th and then factored in the changes that were made for this meeting, and it's a difference of 250,000.
So the new total for this next year is 6,215,000. That's the new number.
That's correct.
Right?
Yep.
But what I'm asking is, where did the reduction come from? What was
Sure.
left off?
Lincoln.
If you want me to go through those, I could do that.
We'll probably hit it when we go through the. CIP.
Yeah, if we
We'll-
can
Okay,
just
we'll
wait
pick 'em
for
up.
the Public Works presentation, you'll see that.
Okay, great. Okay, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Thank you, Commissioner Gay. Commissioner Legree?
No, I'm not gonna ask. I'll wait till Public Works. Save time.
Very good. Sharon?
Thank you. Kevin, do you want to start in your department, the Public
Sure.
Works budget, please?
Right. So, thank you, Sharon. For the commissioners, we'll be starting, I believe it's on page 13, with the Buildings and Grounds Department. And if we could, I'll just kind of go through and highlight a couple of the significant changes from last year or significant items. I will probably pass on the capital, and then we'll talk capital in toto as we get, after we get through the operational budgets on these ones. If you do have a question, I mean, we'll certainly address it at the time, but that would be my approach to take. Do the operational on each of the departments and then hit the capital all at the back
And
end.
that's, thank you, that's how we wanted to lay this out for you. And I know much of this, especially the Public Works Department, lies within the CIP, and we'll touch upon that and answer any questions that you may have related to that.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. So we're on page 13, Buildings and Grounds. Just a couple of things to highlight. It's very close to what we did last year. I will highlight in the salaries, there's a significant increase there in that we added a new position as kind of the facilities manager of the City Hall complex. So that gentleman is on board now. And as a result, we did not renew the asset management contract we had previously. So it probably a one-for-one kind of swap on total dollars. Another item, just to point out, we have about 10,000 in the engineering line. We want to have somebody professional come look at the lighthouse this year. It's starting to show some distress, and we just want to make sure that we take a professional look at it and see if there's anything we can do to help extend the life or to, if we need to take some kind of action on it.
I'm sorry, what line number is that, Kevin?
511000, engineering.
Thank you.
Sure, Mayor. And that's about it on buildings and grounds. You know, you can see the totals down there. You know, it went up by about the amount of that new hire.
Very good. Commissioner Gossett?
Yeah, thank you. Kevin, you had mentioned that we added that position, but took out the contract labor, was that it?
We had a contract with asset management that,
Yes.
that did the facility management
Right,
of
is
the
that,
City Hall
is that
complex.
reflected in here? I'm trying to see where you.
I'd have to ask Bert where that used to be accounted for. I don't know if it was within the buildings and grounds or some other
I
contractual
see
arrangement.
building maintenance has dropped almost half.
Yeah,
Would
so it's in
would that
the
be-
admin budget.
Right.
Oh. Okay, then my question would be, I see that the budget for 2021, or actually the actual for 2020 is 50,000, but we're projecting less in building maintenance for 2022. Is that?
No, I think we're showing a slight increase in 2023 from our 2022 budget. Was 40,000, it went up to 46.
Anything else, Patrick?
Did you find that?
Just also then, what is the total number of staff then for building and grounds? Full-time and part-time?
But you're an admin there. I don't have admin.
Building,
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
total number of staffing in buildings and grounds.
So we have a full-time department head that manages buildings and grounds and the comfort stations. And then we have 4 part-time custodians.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
Yeah, I'll ask my question now. When we hired the facilities manager, what's the bottom line on that? How did we swap out all the pluses and the minuses? Are we about the same?
Bert, do you have the asset management contract number?
You can just give me a ballpark. I just want
Yeah,
to know
I
how.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't
I mean, I
know.
think Kevin's, I think it actually saved us money from what we were paying asset management. I don't have that information right
Okay.
now, but I'll get it for you, but,
The contract for asset management was I'll say in ballpark 58,000. We hired a facilities maintenance manager at $60,000. Of course, that's not including health insurance. However, you know, in just the short time he's been here, 3 weeks, I'm certain that he'll be able to save the city in other areas. We have many different contracts with different vendors for the high-level systems we have in place here in the new building, and his expertise will save the city much in the coming months and years. Plus,
having him right
asset,
here is a
you know,
big
what
saving.
we weren't able to, they weren't able to maintain their level of support that we were looking for.
Yeah, that's that's worth a lot. It's worth a lot. You can't put a number on it, but it's worth a lot.
No, and we really do need someone here on a regular basis, and uh, I know that each department here, not only in City Hall, but the police department and other departments, will be a huge asset.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good move. Uh, Public Works Director Williams, are you also having problems with part-time help? Are we gonna have problems this summer where they'll have problems finding housing? I see well, go ahead.
In this department, we really haven't had too much of a problem
Okay.
with the buildings and grounds. Streets department obviously has been a problem, and we're probably going to have a problem again this year. But this
A big
department,
problem?
we haven't really had any trouble finding the part-time custodians.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Stranowski?
I'm good. The city manager just answered my question.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Sharon?
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go on from
Okay.
Bill.
Thank you. We'll move to page 15, which is the operation budget for the comfort stations. I'll just highlight a couple of things. One, the contractual services. That's our contract with Ms. Blake and her team that provide the staffing at the comfort stations throughout the summer. And with the addition of the additional rooms, restrooms, and changing rooms at Delaware Avenue, plus just the increase in cost for staffing, her prices increased. We negotiated that contract a little while ago, but it increased, and you can see the new number there. It went from about 130 to about 167, so pretty significant jump there. You'll
Mr.
also
Williams,
see
I'm sorry, is that a multi-year contract or a one-year contract?
that's a one-year contract, Commissioner. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Kevin, do we bid that out?
No, we have a pretty good relationship with this team, and I'm not sure how we got them initially, but they've been great at providing the people we need whenever we ask them to add people or what have you. So we've really been sticking with a winner in my mind.
Thank you.
And we do, the city's had the contract with BB&T for probably over 15 years, if not more. You know, the owners of the company and the employees that they hire, you can imagine what's involved there in, you know, replicating that service would be very difficult. We had a glitch in that they did not come back last year with pricing for this, and someone in their management office made a mistake and said they weren't returning to Rehoboth. And, you know, I lost a couple of nights' sleep over that, but then in speaking with the principal, she explained to me that that was a mistake and they're definitely coming back to the city. So they're, you know, certainly worth what they have. We actually sat down with them just a couple of weeks ago, explained and showed them that at Delaware Avenue restroom, improvements that are underway and what they'll be faced with. So that's basically the difference in the pricing here.
Aaron, can we pause for a second? We seem to have lost a few people.
Oh.
Yeah, Tony.
Yeah. So we need some like budget trivia while we're. Yeah, I don't see you anymore either.
Scary.
Proposition that all men are created equal. That's all I know. Yeah, there's, yeah. That one. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear or affirm. All enemies, foreign and domestic. Yeah.
Everest, or I believe he spoke for like 2 hours before.
Yeah, one of the most monumental speeches of our time, you know. Oh, I know what happened.
But just think about these people sitting out there in the hot sun for 2 hours listening to this. President gets up. I've got to look at that asset management. I got a feeling that we still have the expense in there too, so if I take that
That'd be a
out.
nice find, yeah. Other departments, I just printed.
Well, I think it's in admin, and I think it's in other professional services. 511, 500.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But it hadn't been reduced, so,
I'll take it.
yeah. I know you will.
Missing the mayor too.
I'm joining.
Mayor's back.
Hello, gang. Apparently the public Wi-Fi went down in City Hall. Therefore, we lost Commissioner Sharp, Mayor Mills, and the city staff. Kevin, I see you there, so I assume Evan and Sharon got back on. Can you double check, please?
Evan is connecting to audio as we speak. I have lost Sharon. Yep, there she is.
Well, Sharon, are you ready to resume?
Yes, Mayor. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
IT department, are we ready to resume?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
All righty, so I apologize. Again, the public Wi-Fi in City Hall went down, so that knocked all of us in City Hall out of the picture. I appreciate you pausing now to test somebody's memory on where we were when the lights went out. Commissioner
Page
McGree, you might
15.
have been talking. Kevin, do you remember?
Page 15. We had just kind of talked about the contractual services.
Very good. And you were in the middle
for
of
B&T.
review.
Correct.
Have you finished your review?
That line, sure. It's continuing on for comfort stations. You'll see a plus up in the building maintenance. You'll recall we did a major upgrade at the 3 restroom complexes 2.5, 3 years ago. So we're starting to see the need for replacing fixtures and hand dryers to get knocked off the walls and those kinds of things. And then we also wanted to work on it, replace the exterior lighting and change those all to LED lights on the exterior of the building. So see some of that increase. We'll talk capital at the end, and that's about it for comfort stations.
Well, thank you. I'd like to ask a question first, and it has to do with attendance at the 3 public restrooms there. If you, some of you may recall that the Beach and Boardwalk Committee did a report many years ago or several years ago indicating that having individual attendance for each of the men and each of the women's restroom facilities was optimum. And that optimum in terms of resulting increased cleanliness, increased eyes on the ground there, less vandalism, et cetera. And I know at the point that we presented our report, we found out that having attendance on-site premises from opening to close, very, very expensive. Anyhow, Sharon or Kevin, could you advise where are we going to be this summer with attendance if the optimum situation would be a male and female attendant at each of the Baltimore, Delaware, and Rehoboth Avenue facilities?
Thank you, Mayor. And this is probably where we dropped out. So just a few weeks ago, I did have a meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Blake and Chuck Snyder, and we met with them and discussed, showed them actually the plans for the Delaware Avenue restrooms, and that's basically because of what we're adding. Their contract, what they're adding is the difference between last year and this year, with some additional cost expenses as we're doing for staffing. So they're facing the same problems, but they're certainly committed. And they have people that come back year after year because of how they're managed and the fact that they want to be here. So they're adding additional staff. There will be, and we talked at length about the fact that we're adding changing rooms and what that will do, and how that will actually make a difference to not just working in the public restrooms, but just monitoring the changing rooms. And they were very specific about that and wanting to have an attendant, at least on the outside, monitoring those changing rooms, because it's going to be, you know, probably a little bit of a challenge to keep everyone in line there. But they've added staffing for that, and there will be someone, an attendant in the women's area and also the men's area.
Well, I'm not sure I understood the answer. Yeah, there's a difference between the cleaning crew and attendants. For me, the attendants are a man or a woman that sit inside, or typically would sit inside the men's room or sit inside the women's room to keep it clean. Now, certainly they could also combine that job with cleaning if they needed to or wanted to. And they could also go outside. But the point was from the Beach and Boardwalk Committee is that those extra eyes being there on a permanent basis on all the hours that the facilities are open helps reduce dishevel inside and any vandalism inside. So I'm curious, for the Baltimore restroom, do we have a man and a woman attendant? For Delaware, do we have a second pair of men and women at Delaware, and the same thing at Rehoboth Avenue?
Mayor, you were, coming in and out. I think I think I heard you in that. So the attendants and the cleaning crew are one of the same. They do both. And they've added staff to accommodate the additions at Delaware Avenue. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but is there a cleaning person / attendant at each of the 6 restroom facilities? Men and women at
Yes.
Baltimore, men and women at Delaware, men and women at Rehoboth Avenue?
Yes.
Or are they trade? In the early days, they would walk in between the buildings, and that I found very inefficient and did not work as well.
There's a dedicated person in each public restroom area.
So we have
The
6.
entire time it's open.
Say that again, Commissioner Gossett?
It was Commissioner
I'm sorry.
Snusky. The entire time the facilities are open, each
Yes.
restroom is fully staffed
That's correct.
with a person.
Yes,
I think that's what the mayor wanted to confirm.
yes.
All right, thank you. Let's make sure we raise our hands for organization here. I'll come back to you, Ed, but Commissioner Gossett's next.
Yes, just a question on that. Is this area, I'm curious to know, for the cost of the water and the maintenance of the showers along the boardwalk, is that covered in this area, or is that at all covered in any part of the budget?
I think it's in buildings and grounds, Commissioner. Probably under the general maintenance.
Yes.
Where are we at?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree and then Commissioner Sernowski.
I'd like to continue with the mayor's. Does that difference in their contract, are we talking about the staff that's being added because Delaware Avenue has some more facilities now than they had the last time?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sernowski, you took your hand down. Are you done?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner, for clarifying that earlier. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, one final question. So it could be said that for us to supply public restroom facilities to all of our visitors is $250,000 a year, or a little over $250,000.
Where are you, tell us where you're getting the figures from. The contractual services for 167 plus.
Total cost to us, $273,000, correct? Under operating budget for the year?
290.
290,
290 is what I was-
457, page 15. The operating is 290, and then the capital piece.
290. All right, I'm looking at, I guess, a last version. I get 273, and then the capital outlay is 181, but over $250,000 anyway for rounding sakes. Okay, thank you.
Almost 300,000.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sernowski, go ahead.
Yeah, Patrick, that's a very simplistic way to look at the operating costs, but I mean, you have to amortize all the capital, the building, the improvements over the years. I mean, that number is much higher when you look at it in a more holistic view.
I would concur with that, but just as a bottom line and for this year's budget, that's where we are. But I fully support the other aspects of it too. Thanks.
Thank you. Back to you, Sharon.
Okay,
Evan?
we'll continue.
Okay, we'll move on to page 30 if we could and look at the streets budget. And we'll just highlight again a couple of the items. Salaries, we kept kind of constant in that although we did raise our bottom number on part-time help. We took that up to 16. It really wasn't a significant number in the big picture. And then we didn't want to be too optimistic that we would actually be able to hire everybody we needed to. So we just kind of kept it the same and hope that we'll pick up, because we're not getting close to our budget for this year. So hopefully we'll pick up some more people and go get up to that budget number.
Commissioner Legree first.
Kevin, a citizen asked me how much we were going to spend on recycling on the boardwalk. And I know that we're going to have to hand sort the stream, but any ideas on how much more that's going to cost?
Commissioner, we really haven't tried to quantify, the cost. When we did get an authorization for, I think, 2 additional part-time folks, and then the additional electric vehicle for the boardwalk. But as far as what it really takes to do that, we really haven't an opportunity to put it to the test yet.
Will we be able to quantify it a year from now or 2 years from now? Are we going to be able to get a handle on that, or is that going to be elusive?
It'll probably be dependent upon staffing. So if we get enough part-times, in the spring that we could go ahead and start that in the summertime, then we'll be able to kind of track it and see.
So my answer to the citizen is we just don't know yet. And thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Czerniawski.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I just want to mention, I did realize that the online version I was looking at is redlined. I'm the youngest one here and probably have the worst eyes because I couldn't see the red. But Kevin, so the 780 and change in salaries is highlighted in red, which means it changed from the last meeting. And I think if I heard you correctly, you just think that you will be able to hire additional staff, which is...
So I think Commissioner, the original number was significantly higher than that. And then we just kind of put the common sense check against it. That we haven't for several years now been able to attract enough part-time or full complement of part-time and seasonal help. So we said, okay, what would be success for us? If we get to a certain level, then that number would probably be appropriate. So we reduced it in this iteration just because I think that we weren't being realistic in what we thought we'd be able to get to. So,
Okay, the budget of January 10th, the first budget was for that was $740,000. So
there you go. So Bert just showed that to me as well.
A $40,000 approximate increase you just added from last meeting to this meeting. But I mean, as you just stated, the 2022, which is almost over, is significantly less than that. Why would we increase it more at this point?
I can tell you that.
In general, I would just say I'm not sure when this report was run, but I'm sure it's several weeks old, so that number is probably
Commissioner,
not as accurate as it could be.
the year-to-date actuals were actually run in early December, late November, and I'll update them for the next meeting, but it's a bit of a task. I've got to import data.
Realize I thought it was.
Yeah,
Okay. I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, especially for wages, you'll see they're going to be you've had about 4 pay periods since that was produced.
thank you, Commissioner Czerniawski. Commissioner Gossett, and then Commissioner Gay.
Yes, engineering costs increased there. What brought those up?
All right, so just to continue on then, I'll hit that one next. The engineering, you'll see a significant bump up there. The main increase in there is the request for a consultant program manager to help navigate the schedule, cost, and integration of the various pieces of the Streetscape program. And we'll talk more about that when we get into the capital budget. But that's the 52,000 or whatever, I think is the number to get to. Be able to integrate all the different pieces, the undergrounding, the design of the streetscape, the construction funds, the TAP program, all those things kind of integrate that. So that's the plus up there.
And just also, you may highlight this later sorry to jump ahead, but along the lines, Commissioner LeGree commented on the boardwalk recycling. Is the recycling fees that we had discussed, of the additionals to residential recycling, is that reflected in here? Or I know we really did not conclude a discussion of how we want to manage those additional costs, but has that just been absorbed into the budget here, or what other department of the budget?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll turn to Bert to see where that
I'm
is captured, the recycling.
Yeah. As far as the cost of I'm sorry, Patrick, I didn't,
I know we had not reached a conclusion of the additional costs that we're incurring for the recycling of residential recycling with Blue Hen. So I don't know where in the budget has that been reflected?
Yeah, it's contractual services, but it doesn't show any increase. I'm sorry, contractual services shows an increase from 167 to 240. No, I'm sorry, 192,000 is what we've got in there now. So you're suggesting we might want to increase that?
Well, I know that we never really came to a conclusion about how we were going to handle that additional cost, whether it be charged back on an individual basis to the residents or just absorbed into the general fund. So I just want to curious is how or if that has been accounted for within the general budget here.
As far as the revenue side, I think the commissioners decided not to add a recycle fee on a separate recycle fee on the bills. And I believe that we have not increased the recycling fees. I don't think that's been approved or even budgeted. I mean, I say recycling, I mean the trash bill.
Right. It's flat.
There was discussion as to whether we were going to have a separate item for recycle. That, I believe, was determined not to happen, and that the trash would be the only revenue source.
Right, but those additional costs for the Blue Hen contract, residential recycling, is that specifically reflected in the budget as a line item or just absorbed elsewhere in the budget?
Well, the Blue Hen contract is in contractual services.
I thought it was.
What page are you on, Bert?
I'm on page 30.
Line item 511400.
So the 192,000, is that the preliminary?
Yeah, it'll
Okay,
have to
right
be,
figure.
we'll analyze that, make sure we're right on that number. I see what you're saying. It hadn't really increased, but, you know, it may require revision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gay.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my question was about the recycling, but you know, the 192 is down from 2021 actual. So I don't understand that. I was going to ask the same thing because I thought I can't remember what the Blue Hen figure is, but the Blue Hen figure was also variable. It was per pickup. So it could increase, and if we were gonna go to mandatory recycling, it was going to increase, and we never really finished that. So do I hear you saying that not only will there be no fee for recycling charged back to residents, which I think is great, but there's also no increase in the trash fee, because I noticed that on the revenue line, that's pretty flat. It's still about 825,000. So there's no increase proposed for either, correct?
Yeah, but I think Commissioner Gossett was right. We need to review the contractual services account in the Streets Department from 192, just to make sure that that number's reasonable.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, thanks.
We've got hands up for Commissioner Ed and Patrick.
I'm sorry, just one other question on that. If I may, just a couple lines down there. Other professional services went from, I guess, is that 66,000 or what have you, down to 17. Is
So
that
Commissioner,
shifting?
that accounts for the lakes management plan that we're working with the county and the state and the Corps of Engineers on, and we'll finish the payment on that, I think, this year, so we didn't have to budget for the piece of that next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Szymanski, anything further?
Yeah, I do. Let me ask a process question. We're bouncing around here, and I thought we were letting Kevin go through and ask questions line by line. What's the preference on how to do this?
I'll let Kevin respond.
I would prefer to work through the lines and then come back to any questions you might have, because hopefully I'll address some of them before you answer them, or before you ask them.
Great. So okay, I think the last one you actually did was salary, so I'll hold my questions until you're done.
Well, now we're down past other professional services, so we're actually through the ones I was going to highlight. So any other questions on streets?
Yeah, I've got at least one, and I think this is just a mistake. On line 502-700 dental, it looks like for some reason in this version, you've got 197,109 for 22. It looks like that may have just copied over from medical insurance.
That's exactly what
accidentally.
happened, Commissioner. Mayor also saw that, and we saw it earlier before we weren't, unfortunately, it didn't get changed in time for the agenda, but we have a revised version that shows that at 8,700. But
We didn't want to confuse you with giving you the revision early today, so we have that for the next iteration.
Yeah, that's fine. I figured it was just a mistake. And so then just to end on my last question for this, or I guess a clarification. I thought we realized that for the next season, we were not going to be able to, any changes that we made in the fee structure for trash and recycling, we weren't going to get it in. So we tabled any increases at this point, but it was to come back before us soon. Am I incorrect in that thinking?
No, you're correct, and I don't know the mayor's intention, whether, it'll be here before the budget is finalized.
Okay, but okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, Sharon and Kevin, back to you.
I'm sorry, I have one other question, if I may. And again, I
Yes.
don't know specifically where it would belong, but has there been any consideration in this budget, whether this department or other departments, for the dock maintenance?
I'll ask probably Liz to address that when she comes in for parks and the like. But as I understand it, we had 2 years of maintenance basically from the LRCIA.
That's right.
So anything we're doing right now would be fairly incidental.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, your hand's still up?
No,
Yep, you're good. All right, Kevin, next.
Okay, if we could move to page 34, I believe, for wastewater. And just real briefly on salaries, it's going up a little bit. Obviously, we've got, well, not obviously, we have a couple of new guys, which we're pretty sure will get licensed during the course of the year. So we put some in for the additional salary associated with the progression that the young guys make, as well as a certain percent increase for the next upcoming year. You'll see a significant, somewhat significant increase in the cost of the chemicals, down in about 508-100, went from 220 to 252. We've seen some of that price increase, during COVID or due to COVID, and it looks like it's going to continue. So we upped that a little bit. You'll see another entry, 511-500, other professional services, 0 last year. This year we're adding at 50,000 in there. That's to cover our twice every other year CCTV inspection of the outfall. So that's why you see that this year and did not see it last year. General maintenance, more than just a little increase, went up about 40,000. But that does include, in addition to the normal that they're doing, we also included some new level controls out at 2 of the pump stations, Lake Gerard and St. Lawrence. So it wasn't enough to capture into a capital thing because it's more of a maintenance. So we added that specifically as a line under the general maintenance. Our sludge rental remained the same this year, and the other items we'll be covering in the CIP. If you have specific questions about wastewater.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay,
Yeah.
Legree?
Yeah. Number one, I hope we can keep mentioning line numbers because that's how I keep track. I'm looking for electrical expense for electricity, and I'm missing it.
518500.
Got it. That looks like it's fairly consistent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No other commissioners have questions? Kevin, back to you.
Okay, thank you. If we'll go to page 36, I believe, is Water Department. This one, you'll note, virtually very, very similar to last year. We didn't really come in with any other than just small raise for the annual raise for the employees. But a couple just to highlight. Here's one that actually went down. If you look at the chemicals, 508-100. It's kind of been a moving target over the last couple of years. Looks like we overshot our target last, so we kind of brought that down to 85,000 versus the 105 that it was before. Everything else is just very, very similar to the previous year. Engineering dropped down a little bit. I'm not sure where the 18,000 came out of, but so overall, just very similar. Look on the last page. It's the operating budget's virtually the same from last year, and then we'll talk about the capital projects here coming right up. Pending your questions on Water Department.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Commissioner Legree?
Kevin, do we have any part-time workers? I don't see any entries in either the water or the wastewater departments.
Neither of those have part-time folks.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
Yeah, just line 521-500, utility patching. What exactly does that encompass? It's up like 200,000.
Right. So we put a line in there so that we have money for when if we end up having to go back in and patch. If we go into a repair and we have to come back in and resurface the road or put a patch in for it. So it's road resurfacing after we do a utility repair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Legree?
This may be a good time to ask this question. Have we ever given thought to running the laterals to the edge of the street like the county does? And that would really make it easier for homeowners to service their utilities, and we could save having to chop up the streets. And this was suggested to me by George Cole. Well, actually by his mother, but this
Yeah.
is what I thought was a great idea. Have
It-
we ever
that-
given
it's a-
thought to that?
Yeah, I
Mayor?
don't know how it got to where we are today. I mean, most often I've seen where the homeowner is responsible to the property line. So
Yeah,
that would be
both
where
in
the
public-
meters typically go, or curb stop or something to designate the property line. And then
Yes.
the utility is responsible from the property line to the main and everything in kind of public space. That's not how we are here for however we got here, how many years ago. Right now, it's the homeowner's responsibility for the entire service line and sewer lateral.
And our streets are just full of chopped up areas when you drive down the street. And I was just thinking what a great idea that was. when you brought
I'm
it
not
up.
sure that who owns it is going to determine how many street cuts you have, because if it's leaking and you got to go in and repair it, whether it's us or
Sure.
them, it's going to get repaired. And virtually every time, you do a subdivision on a lot or something, now you're adding a new tap, and people now with fire hydrants and all. So you're right. There are a ton of the road cuts for a whole host of reasons.
I'm just trying to process all this and wonder what it would take to avoid those. Thanks very much.
Commissioner Sarnowski?
Kevin, I'm sorry. Did you explain the change at the Lynch well?
Change at the Lynch well.
Yeah, the interest and principal
Oh, I
on
think-
that
I think
has
Bert
gone
will have
up
to
I
explain
can
that.
handle
a
that.
lot.
We have we had a preliminary amortization schedule that was run. And when we consolidated these two loans, although they were a 15-year loan, we had to take into account that the Lynch well or loan was for a shorter period of time. So we can't, take old debt and refinance it with new debt and extend it out for a longer period of time. So basically, from the amortization schedule, we've made an allocation of the interest expense that's going to be paid. It's going to be one single payment, but you're paying interest and principal on two different loans.
Okay,
So
so that
you'll-
is offset by the cost savings of the refinance.
Yeah, the
Essentially,
actual
okay.
payment of the loan is going to increase a little bit over what we had before, but that's because we've shortened the amortization period.
Right. Okay.
And there's a.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yeah, just for clarification, if you will, department heads' salaries or the director of public works, is that distributed among these three, or is that in administration, or is that a separate line item?
The salary of public works director is distributed in 4 different departments. 30% to water, 30% to wastewater, 5% to admin, 30% to building and grounds. 5% to building and grounds, and then 30% to streets. So it is included as
Great,
now.
thank you very much.
Commissioner Sarnowski?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's just a holdover.
All right, you have some hands to take down there. Thank you. Kevin and Sharon?
Go ahead,
Okay,
Kevin.
with that, Mayor and Commissioners, we'll dive into the CIP for the Public Works Department. At this point, I'm going to try to share my screen. And then,
Kevin, can I just ask you a general operating question for Sharon? I didn't want to. It's general, so I didn't want to do it under yours. Sharon, you mentioned that you I think assumed a 3% medical insurance increase. When and you don't know what that will actually be. When does the city get that premium increase? Is that on a calendar year?
I believe it's, the new year starts in July, I believe. So you're probably in the April, May period before you know what the new rates are going to be.
Okay, so it's
We
a
usually
July
hear
to June year.
by you know, mid-March, I'll say. Sometimes earlier than that. Sometimes they're able to give us a, you know, an answer right away. No, there's not going to be any increase, but we're checking in with them biweekly, and the last response was they haven't decided yet.
Okay, but it's a July policy
Yes.
date.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Kevin.
Okay, Mayor, thanks. Hopefully you're about to see this on the screen. So just to run through the items in the capital budget for the Public Works Department. Again, we'll go in that same sequence that they're in your book. So starting with the comfort station. First one up is the design for a new restroom and beach patrol headquarters at Baltimore Avenue. So we got some decisions recently on location. So now we're moving forward with, are going to ask DBF to move forward with the design for a new facility down there.
I think it's important to stress that picture and floor plan there we're all preliminary. That's
Correct.
we're not working from that.
Correct. These just
Thank
came
you.
from the recent discussions with the Streetscape Committee.
Correct. Thank you.
That's it for comfort stations and buildings and grounds. Moving into the streets department. So the access mats, we put in a significant number this year on the access mats. I do want to show you one other thing that will help a little bit with this. The access mats obviously have been a huge help to many people. They get great kudos for everybody that has one, everybody that doesn't have one, wants one, and you know, the thought that you could walk down to the next one that has one has not panned out. Everybody gets really set on which dune crossings they use, and they refuse to move. So we did put enough in. I wanted to show you. So this is one. Obviously, you can see it kind of comes almost all the way up to the in this case, it's down by past the boardwalk. But yeah, let me show you something else. That's not what I wanted to show you. All right, so we get a lot of comments about where they end and where they start, and those kinds of things. So we put a pretty good number in this year with the intent of taking really all of them that we think could actually need them. There are some that are just dead flat, so we don't really plan to do that. But there are some, obviously, that are harder to get across than others. And our intent here is to take each of those that have one or that need one, and then to take it far enough out so it gets down to like this. See, so it gets down to kind of the edge of the dune, so it gets past to the end of the dune crossing, basically. But many of ours, you know, stop up in the dune crossing. So that's why the number is as large as it is. It's to outfit the rest that we think need it, and then to kind of solve the end problem on some that could go another 20 feet or so down the beach or down to the beach. But these, as you know, are extremely popular. We get many calls about why this one doesn't have it or that one doesn't have it. And it has become, although we haven't had a storm to deal with too much as far as having to roll them up, but the ends become quite a problem, and it's a dedicated resource every day that goes out to try to level the ends because of the movement of the sand and those kinds of things. So, but it's a great thing for the folks that are using the beach, because everybody we talk to loves them. We're asking to replace the hook hoist truck. This is one that hauls all of our large roll-on, roll-off containers, yard debris, that kind of thing. And I think the one we're asking to replace is from year 2000, so it's about 21, 22 years old. So that's the hook hoist vehicle we're asking to replace. The beach rake refurbishment. It's really more of a general maintenance line, but we wanted to highlight it just because it's a significant cost each year. So Bert likes us to account for those in the capital budget. But we basically have two, and each year we send one out to get refurbished. So we have a recently refurbished one and a backup for the beach rake, because that baby works every day. We're asking to purchase a new loader. Again, another one that's very old. Yeah, 2005, so about 16 years old. Also gets a lot of use, whether it's sand, snow, trash, whatever, yard waste. Gets a lot of work there in the yard. We would like to continue our citywide paving, so we have $450,000 in for paving. It obviously bumped up a little bit this year with the additional ARPA money and the like, but obviously a good program. This can kind of give you an idea. All of the colored streets are the ones that have been done over the past 3 or 4 years since the outfall was done. So that would include Henlopen Avenue and the others. So it's just a kind of an annual program where we go get our worst streets and try to resurface them. And then next up, continuation of our storm sewer assessment and repairs. You can see some of our problem children there. This will show you, again, another programmatic item that we've been doing now for the last several years. You can see the colored versions here. The green and reds are ones that the greens were finished prior to this year. Reds are being done this year. So you'll see at the end of this year, we're going to be really close to finishing this program where we've gone through and cleaned every one of our storm sewer pipes. And hopefully we'll be able to wrap that up next year with the assessment piece. The Baltimore Avenue Streetscape, we've included $200,000 in this year's budget for that. I'm sure we'll be discussing how this actually plays out, but we put enough money in the budget if we decide to move forward with the streetscape that this would cover our portion of the cost sharing with DelDOT for TAP funding for design if the decision is to move forward with the streetscape program. So that's our $200K match to the design, whatever the first design contract would be for the streetscape. I think that's it for any questions on the streets department.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Gossett. A couple of things, if I may. On your access mats, how many total crossings do we have, and how many will have the mats on them?
So we have 39.
Crossings or crossings with mats?
Dune crossings, and
Okay.
21 of them have mats.
Okay, thank you.
And you see some of these that are rated at the lows, we would not look to put one on those, but the ones that have the mediums, that's how we've kind of prioritized them to date.
Sure. And just curious, the beach rake refurbishment, I know that's a critical piece of equipment to keep our number one prime attraction here, the beach, clean. Is that something that, is that the best available technology out there right now? Should we look to do something different, or are we positive that this is going to continue and keep our asset in best shape that's available?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I don't know that I have a good answer for it other than this seems to work. So we've been able to keep one working all summer, every summer since I've been here. So as far as, is it better to purchase a new one and then do without the rehab maybe every couple of years? I feel that, just the fact that it's out there on the ocean dealing with sand and grit and that kind of stuff every day, it probably needs a look at each year. So I think that's why we've kind of gone this route.
Right.
They do have different technologies for beach rakes. Our particular model from, I think, is a barber surf rake, I believe, has metal tines that stick down in the sand. It's almost like dragging your fingers through the sand and flicking your fingers up, and whatever touches your finger goes in the air and into the container. So as you can imagine, it focuses on bigger trash than smaller trash. Cigarette butts, yeah, it does an okay job, but not perfect. But then you have other manufacturers that have surf type rakes that are literally sifters. There's screens, and they actually sift the sand as it goes. And if you can imagine, depending on the size of the screen, you get every cigarette butt and every small thing. The only problem I've heard about those when I researched them earlier is that they're a third to half the speed of the Barber surf rake, because naturally it's got to go much slower to be able to sift or something. So they even have models that are motorized, and you ride on them and drive and things like that. So it would be interesting to see if there are any other models, Patrick, that might serve us well. I have a question on the rakes. In the old days, we did not rake 7 days a week. What is our program today? Are we indeed raking 7 days a week in the height of the season?
It's my understanding, yes, we are, Mayor. I think we do the entire beach, I think Mondays, or maybe it's Fridays, that kind of on the sequence, and then half the beach every other day. So they'll do north half one day, south half the next, and rotate that way. And 1 day a week, they do the entire beach.
Okay. Patrick, were you done?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, on the subject of the access mats, this isn't necessarily a budget question, or maybe it is, but many people have said to me they're disappointed with how early they are taken up after the season ends, that so many locals, enjoy using them while the weather's warm throughout September. Is there a way we can keep those up a little longer?
We can try. I mean, obviously, get ready for October. Everything starts to happen, right? We're still doing all the trash twice a week. We're still doing these things. We're starting to put Christmas decorations up. You got sea witch. So it just reaches a point where you say, okay, I got to start. Or we won't
So it is
get
a
finished.
staff issue. It is a cost issue in that sense, that you have to have people to do it.
Correct. It's not a cost. I mean, the same guys are going to do it.
Right.
So it's just a matter of other competing priorities on when we can pull them up.
I have a couple of sort of larger questions. First of all, the CIP has for the last some years we're looking at 5 years, but we really usually only focus on the current year. And in the current year's 5-year projection, the fiscal 23 for streets was supposed to be 2.7 million. But what we're looking at today is for it to be 1.4. And it looks like to me that some things just got moved off again, like some of the stormwater basins. The design actually for Wilmington, Baltimore went down 100,000, but the stormwater, the basin 40, that's a big expense, has been pushed off for a couple of years now. Does that mean it's going to be really urgent when we finally do get around to doing it, or is it a budget item? We can't balance the budget and keep that in there. We're waiting for the stormwater fee. What is it? I mean, the costs for those elements of the capital budget have gone way down this year, but I think that may catch up with us in other years. So I'm just curious if that was just done to balance the budget or what.
Commissioner, I would just say philosophically, I think in my mind, I want to wait till we get the stormwater utility established before we tackle those big, the Bayard Avenue storm sewer, the Basin 40 storm sewer. Just because of the high cost of those, it'd be good to have a revenue stream coming in.
Okay, so they're not urgent. In other words, it's okay that they keep getting pushed off.
I think if you ask the residents there, they don't like the water that stays in the curb line a little longer than it probably could, or that stays at the crosswalk at the intersections a little longer than it should. I don't know of any issues with damage being caused by the lack of the stormwater system in Basin 40.
That was my question. Well, speaking of putting things off for a few years, I think we would be remiss not to look at the huge increases that are in line for the next 4 fiscal years, just for streets alone, at, over 9 million next year. Now, I know that it's because the Baltimore Wilmington Avenue Streetscape is in there, and I think that's great. But we have talked about making priorities, which projects are going to emerge as priorities. And my feeling is, if we're going to spend 200,000 on design for the streetscape, we've already made it a priority. It's there, or else you wouldn't spend the money. Or if it becomes not a priority, then that's 200,000 down the drain. So I do think that, and we can talk about this. I think the CIP is on the agenda for a budget to talk about on its own, the totals. And I think when we get there, we really need to look at this, because the following years, as soon as the next fiscal year show such a dramatic increase in capital expenses, and especially ones in the streets department, which is why I bring it up now, that you just have to wonder, where is it going to come from? Even if we get a grant and ours is 20%, we just need to know that, and to make those priorities, because we are starting to spend a significant amount for that project this year.
I agree with what you're saying, Commissioner Gay. I just think that's in another conversation.
That's great. I just wanted to tee it up.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stranowski and then Commissioner Legree.
Thank you, Mayor. On the access mats, in the past, and maybe this is a question for Evan, I thought that a lot of them were paid for or given to us from the state or the county. Are we going to expect grants for that?
I think in the past few years, we've been very successful at getting money from our local representatives dedicated directly to purchasing access mats. So we will hopefully will be as successful this year.
Yeah, they've been very generous in previous years in terms of funding the access mats. So I would think that would continue into the future as well.
And I would just add, Commissioner, that we budget for it, because obviously that's what we want to place them in as many areas and fill the blank spots where we don't have them. So we budget for them. What happens usually is in the middle of the end of the state's fiscal year, or in the beginning or whatever, I get a call from one of the state legislators, and hey, we have some money. Can we buy a beach mat? So we put that money towards it.
Okay, great.
Let me respond too, if you don't mind, Ed. I was involved in the original acquisitions, and we got grants directly from DENREC back then. So that's how it all started, and it was so successful the first year. We applied the second year and got some more grants. And then Bethany Beach and other towns got wind of it and started applying for grants, and they all shriveled up. And so we kind of succumbed to the success there of other towns asking for grants also. But and after a while, I think we ended up having to fund them 100%. Then our state legislators stepped in.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then I'm sorry, I don't have last year's CIP in front of me, but my recollection is that the LED retrofit project was a priority, and I'm just kind of wondering the rationale on pushing that further out.
I would just have to, say that follow along with Kevin's answer. I think it's a priority, but, other things come up that, jump over that priority, because there's priorities, everywhere. So, and this is also related to, I can't pinpoint exactly what, but we're waiting on some other studies, I think, to then determine whether this is the best way to go, the best one to, jump up to the top. So I know Kevin's looking at that as well.
Okay, just asking the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner Legree?
Yes, Kevin. Have we finished the assessment of the Basin 40 project? I mean, we have looked at all those lines and we know which ones have to be replaced, and we have decided if we can repair any of them and all that. Is that a stable number? The cost?
Yes, Commissioner. Well, it's a stable number from last year, basically. So it might have gone up a little bit, but out there, it's not. There is no stormwater system there. There's no pipes.
Yeah,
so we did have a consultant come out. He did the design. We know where it would run. It comes over to Sussex and down and gets down to the lake at that point. So we have a good number from that design estimate when he did the design last year.
Just how much does a new rake cost?
I don't know. I'd have to get that for you. I don't think he has that.
Okay. I'm sure, I am positive that you guys have compared and calculated that it's cheaper to overhaul it than it is to buy new or let it run down.
I think it's more a matter of that we think it needs to be looked at significantly each year or every other year. If we bought it and spent the capital, then you'd think, well, you don't have to get it refurbished every couple of years. It might last 4 or 5, but we don't believe that in our hearts, that it needs to get looked at every other year because of the abuse it takes day in, day out in the summertime.
Yes. And I agree with the mayor. I think this technique with the fingers is the best and the easiest and works well, and we can get it raked in a hurry and keep it pretty clean.
Beach looks great at 8:30 in the morning, every morning.
I don't hear complaints from, of course, maybe I'm just not hearing them from our visitors that our beaches are dirty or anything like that. Just the opposite. I think people think we have a pretty clean beach. I want to remind everybody that phase 4 of the wastewater upgrades starts clicking in 2024. At least a consideration of phase 4 has to be looked at, and that's another expense that is sitting out there waiting for us. Commissioner Gay was mentioning Streetscape a second ago, and we have phase 4 of the wastewater looking at us right now, at least. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And when we get to the wastewater CIP, I think that will be part of that. Anybody else? Ed, do you have your hand still up?
No.
Nope. All right, you're finished. Thank you very much. With that, Kevin, Sharon, I'll hand it back to you.
Getting just back down to our wastewater. First item up is the State Road Pump Station. I know we've talked briefly about this, except for with Commissioner Legree, we spent a little bit of time kind of looking. This came to light last year as a result of some work we did so we could actually bypass State Road Pump Station to facilitate some of the construction that was going to happen down at the plant. And when we were able to dewater and actually get in and inspect it, we were shock and awe. It doesn't adequately describe our feelings of seeing the condition of it. So this is, while we're not labeling it emergency repair, but it's our #1 project for the upcoming fiscal year. This one has to be done, and we have to get right after it as soon as we can. But you can see the deteriorated condition of the State Road Pump Station, which takes everything of ours, everything from North Shores and Lopen Acres, goes through the State Road Pump Station to the plant. So it's our main pump station getting flow to the plant, and we've got to address this right away. So #1 project for me is this one. Fortunately, if you recall, a year or so ago, Bert went back and reclaimed funds from engineering costs that we had spent that we could have charged to the SRF. So when he was doing his whole loan recalc and the SRF piece, it got back to us, I think, $1.6 million. So I think that'll help offset the pain of having to go do this this coming year.
You'll see a revenue line item for 1.6 million. And essentially what that is the money we set aside for the outfall and related projects. That happened because we were spending less to complete the outfall than originally anticipated. In order to take advantage of the full amount of the available loan, we submitted invoices that were back to as far as 2010 for engineering. And we had paid those out of pocket. So we went ahead and submitted them to DNREC. They in turn raised the loan amount to the full amount that was available. And we received a check for almost 1.6 million as reimbursement. And so we've set that aside for projects. And this is one where we're going to essentially use these funds to pay for this project.
Thanks, Bert. And the other piece that we're planning to do is use the 400,000 plus or minus from ARPA that we're due to receive this coming year. So between the money Bert saved us by recategorizing some of those earlier payments, and then the ARPA money that we'll hopefully be able to cover the entire cost of the State Road pump station. This is out at St. Lawrence Pump Station, the valve replacement. This valve is what keeps flow from coming back into the plant. So this is kind of a long-term kind of maintenance thing. This one is due to be replaced, and we've got money in this year's budget to do that. A programmatic issue or item again is the kind of the cleaning and Cctv assessment of our sanitary sewer system. This is similar to the others. You can kind of see here's what we've been able to do over the last few years with respect to cleaning every one of our sanitary lines. The greens were done last couple of years, and then the reds are the ones being done this year. And again, we're getting very close to trying to wrap that up, get the rest of ours, and then we'll have to get down and do North Shores as well. But obviously a program that's paying us big dividends by cleaning and finding things that need to be repaired before they completely fail. The PLC replacement at Pump Station 1 and at B3 down at the plant, both of these are at the plant. These are our primary logic controllers. These are what tells the various things to turn on and off at the various times. So we're going to do 2 of those this year. Our pipe rehab program, again, this is where you can see some of the condition of some of the pipes we found, and then a couple of shots of our lining operation where we did some lining. But this is, again, after we go through and Cctv and inspect them, we find these things we need to repair right away, then this provides us the opportunity and some funding to be able to go in and make those repairs as needed. We put on a pump. We usually replace at least one pump every year. So because of the high dollar of the pump itself, we put it on the capital list. But I'm not sure which one he's targeted to replace, but I know we do one a year. Then we have this golf cart that they use for buzzing around down on the plant if you have to get out to the far ends or whatever. And it has reached the end of its life. So I'm suggesting proposing that we upgrade it to a Polaris, so it's similar to, we have many of them in our fleet now, and they seem to work real well. It gets us the 4-pack, so we can take the folks out to the various locations. And then the other added benefit is if we wanted to, we can actually license this, and they can use that as another vehicle to get to various things within the city. Any questions on the wastewater?
Anybody?
Yeah.
Commissioner Gay?
I do. I'm not surprised. This is one that actually went the other way. That it was supposed to be like 600,000 for this year, and it's gone up to 3 million. But the biggest reason for that is that state road, and that sounds like it's an urgent situation, right?
He indicated, yes, it's immediate. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I
You'll
thought so.
see-
But I do notice that the phase 4 is now showing a design cost of 200,000 that was not there before. Is there a reason for that? Was it just forgotten about before, or absorbed as part of the 6 million, or what? But I noticed there's a phase 4 design in this year's.
Yeah, I think that's a previous
Yeah,
previous
that's-
version or has been updated.
Yeah, that's actually one of the, I think that was the version of the capital improvement plan from the first meeting. And that was one of the changes to the CIP for this meeting, which,
Oh, that's come out. I see.
yes,
Okay.
that's come out. Yep.
I
That,
see what
that
you're
was
saying.
actually,
Yep, it has gone down a little bit. Okay, I get it. Okay, that was all I had.
Commissioner Shanowski?
Yeah, Kevin, just to confirm, all of these are coming out of the enterprise fund, correct? Not the operating?
That's correct.
That's correct. Bert tells me that's correct.
Commissioner Legree?
He's muted.
Jay, you're muted.
You did.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry. I just want to remind everybody, go to the last page, look at the journal, look at the totals.
Yeah.
And take a look at 2023, and then take a look at 2024.
Yep.
And see where we're headed. I tried to make that point a minute ago, and I think this makes it even better. 2025, you get a little break, and then 2026, you get a big break, but we need to keep thinking about that as we go forward. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Commissioner Shanowski?
Yeah, just to confirm or clarify, a good portion of those expenses are related to wastewater and water, and those increases over the next few years have been built into our rates, correct?
Well, you're gonna, in the wastewater department. you're
Water
gonna-
and wastewater both. Yeah.
At wastewater, you're gonna have to raise the funds to pay for our percentage of the phase 4. Because the county's not gonna contribute anything. So the project's about, say it's $10 million. I think that's about what Kevin, I think, said it was, between 10 and 11. So we'll be paying 58% of those costs. So we've got to raise revenue. And the way I've forecasted it, it wouldn't be completed in 1 year. So we need probably about at least $1 million of revenue every year for about 4 years in order to fund it. So that's going to have to come either through rate increases in the sewer bills, or
Come from the operating,
I'm sorry.
or come from the operating budget.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's that's right.
So I guess my question is, I think what you're saying is $4 million for under wastewater is not or has not already been accounted for in what the working utility group did a couple years ago.
No, I think it has, Commissioner. So that, if you'll
It
recall
has.
the discussion about the 58 or some percent increase that's going to hit us on 1 April of 2024, that's in that number. That the Phase 4 project is really the main reason for that rate increase in 2024.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it stays
I
in
just
for
wanted
stays
to
in-
be clear that
Correct.
these things have already been accounted for and planned for in our rate structure.
Certainly with the wastewater and wastewater, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. So, then in by my calculation, we're really looking at a $10 million increase in our operating, from our operating account next year. So
Well,
I do
We
think
won't have
that,
to pay for the entire 10 million because the county's going to pay 40.
no, I'm sorry, I'm talking about operating expense capital improvement plans, not wastewater, not water.
Okay.
So as Commissioner Gay said, I think we need to have the conversation in the very near future. What's the city manager's plan to raise, what's the revenue stream for an extra $10 million next year? I think, and we don't have to have that conversation now, but I think we right this moment, but we need to start having it soon because we're asking to prioritize things. So I think we need to start having that conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gay and then Commissioner LaGree.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was very helpful to, and I thought that the rates were already sort of in place for taking care of that phase 4. However, I do notice that the revenue for wastewater is really going up. And the preliminary for 2023 is $6.5 million. As opposed to the budget for this year, which was 4.8. So in addition to looking at prioritizing and what we're doing, I think we need to revisit maybe the rates. The revenue seems to be there. It seems to be more than we budgeted for. And I would hope that would have some impact on a rate increase in the future. Assuming this revenue is set aside, this additional revenue is set aside for use for the wastewater plant, right?
Well, the rates haven't increased from, since, I guess, November 2019. So
Right.
the increase is related to usage.
Right. But it's an increase nevertheless. All I'm saying is that we should revisit that. Because by the time the projected rate increase goes in 24, it will have been 5 years since that was put in place. And I think it's worth revisiting the scenario. Maybe we don't have to raise it as much because we have the revenue from use. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Commissioner LaGree.
If we all recall, the rate structure that was voted only goes for 4 years. So we're going to have to revisit, as Commissioner Gate has said, we're going to have to revisit our rate structure. And we'll be able to shift some things around when we do that. Number 2, we still, I think, are going to be able to prioritize the sequence of upgrades on phase 4. If you recall, those upgrades were upgrades made after the wastewater treatment plant achieved the capacity that was designed at 3.4 million gallons a day. So we may be, and these were upgrades that were like the water, like the dewatering plant and other upgrades that were necessary, but were not urgent. So we may have a little flexibility there. We might be able to stretch that out another year. But these are all things that we're going to have to, as Commissioner Gates and Commissioner Chernowski have said, we need to prioritize. We need to talk about it and get this set aside and straightened out and get a path forward. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. I still have hands up for Ed, Susan, and Jay.
Oh, no, I'm done.
Anybody else? Ed again?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, Commissioner LaGree, you said that it only, the rates were only planned to, for another 4 years, but that's when phase 4 ends, right?
That's when it starts.
No, when the rates were voted on, and I think, what was it, 2019?
Yep.
Those were set to expire in, remember we talked about a flat rate for 4 years, and then we would come back and readjust the rates. So starting with FY 2024, it was my understanding that we were going to relook at the rates. Thanks.
Good point. And Commissioner Gay and I were fortunate enough to come on to the board right after you guys voted on that, so forgive my memory not being as clear.
Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, Sharon and then Kevin, go ahead.
Okay, for the water department, see if we can get caught up here. Another iteration of our programmatic replacement of water meters throughout our system. We've been doing this for a few years now. We think if you look out in the next year or so, we're actually going to get to the point we think we have enough mass that we would be able to spend a little bit of money and get the remote read so it could be read and bills processed via antenna as opposed to having to ride around the streets and get the meter readings from there. So we're moving toward that. Again, it's just systematic replacement of water meters that many have been in the ground for 20, 25 years. The pipe assessment and rehab, you'll know we did some significant water main replacements this year, augmented by some of the ARPA money that we got. We added a water main as well. We did Olive and Maryland this year, and that program will continue. It seemed to work very well, incorporating it into our paving program as well. So we dig up the street, put the water main in, and then resurface shortly thereafter. So we'll look to continue that as well. Control PLCs, primary logic controllers for both of the water towers need some work this year. So we've got to change out the ones in the 2nd Street Tower as well as the ones in the Lincoln Street Tower. This is in accordance with a study our SCADAs and controls consultant provided a couple years ago, and we're just kind of working off the priority list on the controls replacements. Well 2R rehabs. This is one of the wells out at the Lynch Well complex. And this is just a rehab of the well. They'll go in, pull the screens, either clean the screens or replace the screens to get that just a general rehab on well 2R. This is one we had not really anticipated a couple of years ago, but well 6 depicted on the left is over in the Breezewood community right next to the playground, kind of a small site. It's been out of service for the last 2 years because of some water quality issues we have out there, and there's no area there to kind of to build a treatment for that particular well. So we're looking at a site to install another well. So we're looking at our well 8 compound, which you can see on the right, and that piece of property goes a pretty good distance to the rear. So we're looking at a site out there to put a new production well. So this year we're actually going to try we've done the study to say, okay, will the water supply there accommodate it and those kind of things. So we're taking the next step. We want to take the next step this year and actually drill the test well so we can get DNREC or Office of Drinking Water approval for a production well on site. But it's a lengthy process to do, so we want to get that started this year with an eye toward replacing well 6 in 2 years. And that's it for water, unless you have any questions.
Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Sarnowski?
No, that was still up from before.
Still up. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, this is one where it looks like some changes were made between the first CIP that we got in today. Looks like the cost of the Lincoln Street controls went down a good
Correct.
bit. It's now showing 55 from what
Correct.
I'm seeing on the screen.
That's correct. Cost went down. I think it might have been a carryover where at one time, I think we had them both combined, 2nd and Lincoln Street combined, and we just missed the kind of the reduction in it. But we actually have the quotes now. And
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
50 and 55 are good numbers.
Right, okay. That was all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
This is off topic, but Lewis, a neighboring town, is having some controversy over the aquifer replenishment areas for their wells. do we have any, and you were mentioned relocate or doing a test well, relocating, drill another well. Do we have any kind of exposure or vulnerability there that we need to be mindful of?
I think we're in pretty good shape, Commissioner. I think Lewis, if I recall, their issue is on the beach side of the canal.
Yep.
Yep. They've got wells there. Ours are, obviously, we don't have any within city limits, so we're all out, west, not all west of Route 1, but out along Route 1, which we don't foresee any issues with the quality of the water and the quantity of water available to us. We are limited by geography, right? We don't own a lot of property out there. So anything other, if we can't get it onto the site at well 8, then we got to come back with plan B for either go and find in someplace else or invest in some treatment specifically at well 6, which we really don't want to do.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett and then Commissioner Sharp.
Yes, thank you. On the pipe assessment and rehab, has there been a specific schedule established for that of streets to be addressed?
Commissioner, we have not formally put down a list by priority. What we do have, and I'll just touch on it briefly, we have a separate, I'll come back to a separate board meeting and kind of run through the new lead and copper rule, which is going to cause us some significant concern. But what we have done is targeted 4-inch water cast iron mains, which all have lead goosenecks, right? So anytime, so we'll look at the streets that come up on the priority list to pave next year and assess the water mains under those streets, as we do each year. And we'll try to pair them up such that we could do a water main replacement at the same time. But we're prioritizing 4-inch cast iron mains with lead goosenecks, and then also prioritizing, especially if they're on a dead-end street, because you like to have a lot of flow with through the pipe all the time. So that's our list. We haven't formalized it into ranking of where we need to go first, but we will be as part of the new lead and copper rule requirements. So we'll have to be developing that over the next couple of years. But more to follow on that when I bring everybody up to speed on the new lead and copper rule.
When you do that, also, would you include some information as to kind of what percentage we have accomplished within the city of replacements overall?
Sure, can do.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp?
Had a recollection of back on October 4th, there was some funding left over from the project in Rehoboth Gardens, and I think it was around $300,000. And I'm just kind of curious where that funding was redirected to.
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, that went right into the water main replacement. So that enabled us to add the water main on Maryland, basically.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Sharnowski and then Commissioner LeGree.
I'm sorry, I'm still up from before, Mayor.
All right, good. Commissioner LeGree.
I apologize for asking, going back to wastewater, but just as a point of interest, where does the West Rehoboth influent join us? Is it ahead of State Street?
It does not go through State Street Pump Station. So it joins, comes from their pump station over by the big Route 1 bridge, a big bridge. They have a little pump station over there, comes under the canal into basically our streets yard, and then hits a pipe there and comes down to the plant.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sharnowski.
No, I'm still up from before. I'm sorry.
Take your hand down.
No, I think Max usually does it for us.
Yeah, he's not available today. Commissioner, so it looks like all the input from the commissioner so far. Kevin and Sharon?
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
That's the completion of the Public Works budget, Mayor and Commissioners. The next item that we have, if there aren't any other questions, is the Wilmington Baltimore Streetscape project. We touched on that in the operating budget under the engineering and the streets department. $52,000 we have in there for the project project manager there. Were there any questions or comments for that? So what we have in the CIP now for next fiscal year is obviously the looking forward, as Commissioner Gay had mentioned earlier, a scope of services for that and a commitment as to where the mayor and commissioners would like to go with that. We have that budgeted. That's certainly a priority right now. And unless the commissioners decide differently, then we'll continue on that path.
Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, just a few possible clarifications in the proposal that we've received. Thank you. Throughout the proposal, it talks about streetscape concepts and subsequent designs, schedule input from a streetscape designer, streetscape concept plan designer. Has that been determined? Is there a plan designer, or how is that role defined in this?
Commissioner, certainly not at this point. I think the next decision we're going to need from the group is whether to proceed with undergrounding. So if we have a decision on undergrounding and a decision on whether or not to proceed with the streetscape, then this guy that we're hoping to bring on board would be able to tie all those together. So if you get a yes on undergrounding and a yes on streetscape, now you got to start planning out that program such that you can design the undergrounding, because you can't incorporate that with the DelDOT. If we're looking for DelDOT funding, they're not interested in paying for that. So integrating the undergrounding, if we do it, integrating with the designer of whatever streetscape we decide to do, that's what this person is supposed to help us do.
So am I understanding it that there is another role to consultant or individual or company, what have you, to play as the streetscape design concept, or was that Rossi, or what?
So our concept designer was Rossi, and then I guess it depends on whether or not DelDOT is going to assist us with moving the program forward, which we think they are. There will then be a streetscape designer, and I don't know if they would use one for all 8 blocks or they would split it up somehow. I understand their funding stream is limited to, it's $1 million kind of program, and we have to come up with 20%. But the other thing is you can only really have one of those going at a time, because you have to start the construction, or they have to know that you're serious about building it before they would start another design contract. So all those kind of things are what we just need somebody that can focus on that and give us a good recommendation on how to move forward. I think we just divided it into 4 years, right? The overall cost of the streetscape, and that's how we got a number for the 5-year CIP. But I don't think any of us really think that it's going to flow necessarily in that pattern. It may go a little differently than that.
And I was also curious in here, it talked about JMT will rely on the information contained in the plug study report. But in reviewing that plug study, I thought, and help me through this, you understand it more than I do, but there was they were requesting in that plug study that an in-depth survey needed to be done of the actual customers as to whether they were going to use which style of power, and the power company could not, tell them which side to use. So there was a possibility that we could have to run dual power and this type of thing. So is that plug study necessary to happen, this in-depth study, and will that be an additional cost?
So that would be associated with the design of the undergrounding. So yes, there would be probably another designer, unless we have someone that's already engaged in a project kind of do that. But the plug study kind of talked us through all the different things that'll have to be considered if the decision to go forward with the undergrounding is positive. So there would be a design contract to design the undergrounding. You'd have a construction guy to do that work. You'd have a designer trying to sequence it such that then the designer for the streetscape, who has to know what your designer of the undergrounding is doing, so he can design the streetscape to account for that. So the meshing of all that is what this consultant would do for us. Again,
And this
pending
be
whatever
a-
decisions,
basically kind
you know,
of
the
an
board
owner's rep
makes.
From JMT for us?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, say
We have
again.
an owner's rep from JMT for the city?
Correct. It's not in this particular scope, but if it moves forward, that would certainly be an item we could consider either adding to through an amendment or go out for a separate entity. But ideally, I think the JMT selection it would be a good one for that because they're so familiar with the city, with the Streetscape program. They've done the undergrounding piece. They're doing ADA compliance for us. So they're pretty well enmeshed into, what's going on in the city. So they would make a logical choice. But that's not part of that. Right now, it's not part of that scope for them to do that. We wanted to see, where that will fall. That may not happen at any time in the next FY. It may be a year or two out as the sequencing gets laid out.
So is it that in hiring this person or approving this concept of a owner's rep, if you will, this 7 million that's in the CIP for the next 4 years, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for the project, would they be able to really define that 7 million? I mean, and how you come about to get more realistic figure?
Yes, I would expect them to be able to do that.
All right, at this point, that's all the questions I have on this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sarnowski and then Commissioner Gay.
Never mind.
All right,
Hand still up.
Commissioner Gay.
I just want to clarify, City Manager, you said that there's already budgeted funds for this JMT proposal of $53,000. Is that part of the capital design for the Streetscape project, part of that through 200, or is it somewhere else in the budget?
No, ma'am. It's in the engineering budget for streets.
Oh, okay. I think you did say that, didn't you?
Right.
Okay.
So we had about a 50K bump up from what we typically have in the streets engineering, and that's for that position.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Commissioner Gossett, your hand's still up. You have additional questions?
No, just relaying too much on IT. I guess I'll go back to this. Thanks.
Nobody has their hands up now. Thank you very much. With that, I'll return to Kevin and Sharon.
That was our discussion for Wilmington, Baltimore Avenue Streetscape. Just wanting the mayor and commissioners to have that information along the lines of the budget and what we're predicting for the next fiscal year. So if there are no other questions, that's the remainder of our presentation for budget number 2.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sharon, Bert, Kevin, and Evan. Good job. We appreciate it. We'll open it up for broad comments or questions before we adjourn.
The only thing that I would ask, that I know our next meeting is respectful on contributions to the fire department, the library, the museum, and Main Street. And I was wondering, as part of that, if you could also provide for us any in-kind contributions that we are making to those organizations, such as water, sewer, power, those types of things, that bills are paid by the city for those particular properties. Thank you.
Yes, we'll have that information.
Thanks.
It's going to be going forward, it's going to be part of our budget document that we put out every year too, so the public can see not just what the direct expenses were, but or direct contributions.
Has there been any specific requirements or that what information those individuals are going to present to us, or is it just whatever they have, what they offer?
Well, ideally, I think I don't know that it's been a requirement, but providing us with a copy of their 990 would be a start, and along with financial statements. I don't think that's unreasonable if you're donating money, especially we're over $200,000 in donations. So I think that would be your decision, Commissioner.
I mean, to me, that would be a baseline start for all of those organizations. Because it's taxpayers' money that we're basically forwarding on for the services of the community, but I think we need to be responsible in what we are doing.
Understood.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Sharp, and then Commissioner Sharnowski and Commissioner Legree. Commissioner Sharp?
I'm just reflecting on the big decisions that we have coming up, which are already stated as Streetscape and the undergrounding. And could you just refresh my memory of what the critical time frame is to actually make those decisions?
Kevin? Sharon?
Well, yeah, great question. The seriousness of the timing, I mean, it's how quickly do you want to move forward with it? So we put money into the budget, starting in April, to start doing certain things. So it'd be nice to have a decision prior to that, so we don't go down that path if the vote is going to be negative. So just using that benchmark would be, the 1st of April.
So the 1st of April. So really during February and March, we need to be focused on finalizing decisions.
Well, Commissioner, I would say that we're just, as we follow through the projects here, if commissioners decide definitively to move forward with this, we have to have the money in the budget. So yeah, it's a timing issue of, if we left it out, then obviously there wouldn't be funding for it until fiscal year 24. And, that if the commissioners are adamantly in favor of this, we wouldn't be doing our job because the money is not in there.
No, and I think that clarity of the critical nature is very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, so you're correct. A decision needs to be made whether to take it out or leave it in. We're leaving it in. Of course, it's not $7 million. If you do decide to go ahead and we're in this position next year, then, $7 million is a higher figure, obviously, than 200, and then 52,000 in the operating budget. So, yeah, I think if you move forward with this, then obviously there needs to be a focus in the next fiscal year as to how to pay for that $7 million each year moving forward.
Thank you.
If I could just add something too, I think sort of the critical decision, I'm looking to Kevin and Sharon, I think the critical decision at this point is whether or not to underground the utilities. Because if the decision is made to underground utilities, there's going to be steps that we need to take in order to plan for that. If the decision is not to move forward with undergrounding utilities, then we can proceed in terms of going to DelDOT and seeking TAP funds for design of Streetscape.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. Commissioner Sharnowski?
Thanks. Kevin, and I'm sorry if you already answered this, I guess the 200 plus the 28 million that you spread over 4 years for the Streetscape project, that is what the consultant projected?
Correct. I think they had a 28 million total cost. We kind of split it up into just 4 even groups for simplicity more than anything else.
Or 200 and then 28 million over 4 years plus $1 million from DelDOT that we would expect. So that's 29.2. We've
well, I think I would just clarify a little bit, Commissioner. I think that million R2 and DelDOT 800 is in that big $28 million figure.
Okay.
They had the design costs in there as well.
Okay. I guess a general question for Sharon. Do you plan on giving us an update of the 21-22 budget in the near future?
Yes, Bert's working on at least through the third quarter, so we won't have that information, and we usually have it by the third week, so that's, next week, I think we'll be paying all the bills and tying everything out, so definitely by the workshop in February, if not before that.
Could you at least give us any guidance on if it looks like we're going to have a surplus? Because it certainly appeared in the last update that we would have a surplus.
Well, it looks pretty good right now, but a lot can happen in between. But we will have numbers for through December very shortly. And so that budget report probably can be put in your hands before we have the next budget meeting, possibly. Maybe February 8th is the next budget meeting, or is the next meeting, but we'll have it available for you by the next meeting.
Bert, if I could add just one thing, when we do that, I mean, the operations budget, we have a good feel for because most of that happens over the summertime, right? Any staff increases and all that.
Right.
Our CIP does not usually get executed until the wintertime. So all of our street work, our water lines, our water meter replacements, our street paving, all that had not hit. So if you see a CIP number to look, wow, you're really under your CIP, don't hold me to that because we're spending it now, what you authorized us to do last year. And those are some pretty big numbers.
Let me preface, when I say surplus, I'm really just looking at the revenue side.
Okay.
It is what I'm talking about. I know we increased things or reprioritized and added some additional money for CIP projects. I think a lot of that came from the art money. But I guess my point is I want to prioritize more. I don't want to wait another year for some of these things. And I think that if we've got the surplus to do it, then we should, because we're looking at very big CIP numbers next year and the year after. And if we can get some of those things done now, or at least, start it, if we've got a surplus in this fiscal year. And I guess, in addition to that, I'd like, there's a few things on the revenue side that we've not yet determined. The start of the parking season, and things like that. Sharon, if we do change the parking rates or the length of the season, have we determined that wouldn't take effect this year? It would be the following year?
The changing the parking rates for 2022 season?
Correct. I'm just asking for my recollection is that if we do enact any of the changes, they would not be included in this budget season, correct? It would be the 24 budget?
No, we're ready to, it would be reflected in this year. We're ready to add that, any prediction of estimated revenue to this budget. We're just waiting for the commissioners to.
Okay, so there is still some opportunity
Yes.
for additional revenue to be included in this budget.
Correct. And I think those discussions will, some of them will be later today. And no, we're on standby here. If you.
Okay. Do we have, in one of our budget meetings, do we have one focused on revenue specifically, or it's just going to fall under each topic or each department?
It does fall under each department. We can carve out some time to speak to that, of course. But, that's the general overall balanced budget. So, obviously any change in the expense we would look at the revenue and see how we're going to manage that.
I think you're probably familiar with the trends at this point. By September, October, we've usually collected about 75% of the revenue that we're going to have for the whole year.
Right.
So from that point on, usually expenses exceed revenue for most months, from say November through March, in the general fund. Now, typically what's changed that in recent years has been transfer tax. We've sort of been surprised. So we've had some very good months after October in the transfer tax. So we actually had monthly surpluses because of that.
Yeah, I mean, the big things that we're going to see now are the rental tax coming in, the mercantile licenses coming in, and hotel accommodations tax are really the three things. Yeah, I would just kind of, and I'm personally going through the mercantile license fees, and I think in some areas they need to be increased. So I would like to, one, I'm going to need Sharon or one of your staff to help me just make sure that some of my data is correct. But I would like to have that included in one of the budget meetings. And I'd also like to talk about property taxes as well. I don't want us to go another 15 years not having a 50 or 75% increase instead of doing a 1%, 1.5% increase every year. So people are not shocked, as they were a couple years ago when we just, and we can plan better that way in forecasting, at least. So those are just a few things that I'd like to talk about at one of the near budget meetings.
And that would be, again, up to the mayor as to whether he wants to put it on a budget meeting or just put it on a separate workshop meeting. Mayor, we can talk about that offline.
Yep, that'd be fine. That'd be fine. Is that all, Ed?
Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Legree?
City manager, have we talked to the folks who are going to come and ask us for contributions? Do they know what they should be bringing? I know Commissioner Gossett asked a second ago about some information that would be very helpful. Number one, and number two, do we want them to come in on Ring Central, or should they call in on the phone? How can they? How's the best way to tell them to attend a meeting? Because that's coming up here quickly in February.
Yeah, certainly, Commissioner. So we've been in contact with each of them, and they're aware that meetings are held virtually, and they will be on virtually. As to your question about are they prepared? Well, yes, I think they'll be prepared. I hope they will be. We've been asking for their financial reports, and if you don't have that already, you'll be seeing that soon.
Okay.
Margaret will distribute those today. So we'll have four sets of documents from the four agencies. So email me back if you believe that anything is missing, additional that you would like. All righty. So we'll get that out to you. Should be able to get that out to you today.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I completely agree with taking a look at the revenues and especially the surplus that we might have for this year. But in answer to, and I take Kevin's point about the fact that much of the CIP expense isn't done until this time of year. But I wonder if at the same time we're looking at, there could be a projection, right, for what the expenses would be for the year as well, because we must be pretty far along with those projects, right? So if we could look at both, but but the expense one won't be an actual; it'd be a projection. And then the other thing I was going to say is you talked about the streetscape and the 28 million and spreading it over 4 years. I do remember that in the estimates we got from Rossi, there was a footnote that said that those numbers were based on doing it all at once. And I know all at once maybe not be 1 year, but I'm not sure that does anticipate spreading the project over several phases like Rehoboth Avenue was done. there was an indication that, and whenever I see wording like that, I have to assume that spreading it out would actually cost more. So I just want to, mention that.
Agreed.
Well, and remember the proposal from JMT, next step is to do additional analysis of phasing and budgeting. And so I think that would help us out there quite a bit. Commissioner Gossett?
A couple of questions going back to the undergrounding and the 7 million over 4 years. Mr. Williams, does that 7 million, does that incorporate any of the undergrounding proposal? I think it was like 9 or 11 million. Is that separate from that?
It is not included in that streetscape line.
Okay, so
That
we would
be
have to then
in addition to that.
add to that 7 million. Okay. All right. And just as another follow-up generally, I know again on the February 18th meeting, we've got CIP follow-up and then follow-up with department heads. Would it be possible to have by that time, if you will, either an organizational chart or just a listing by departments of showing the number of employees, both full and part-time, that we currently employ?
Certainly, we can do that.
I mean, for across the board, all departments.
Commissioner, you just need numbers? Do you need job titles, or what would you prefer?
Whatever's easiest to pull together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well, the budget document's got a page on that. We haven't had many increases in full-time people. So the budget document that's on the website has a listing of employees by department.
Oh, great.
Anybody else? Susan, your hand's up and Patrick's hand's up. You're down, okay. Anybody else? Broad questions? Commissioner Shanowski?
Mayor, I'm going to ask Bert, and I'm sure he's probably thought about this, but we're looking, is at that 28 million over 4 years is real money. And I think if we could at the next meeting, just have I know the consultant will come in and help us do budgeting and forecasting and planning, but I think it would be nice, a down and dirty overlook, of what our debt service would be 3 years from now or 2 years from now when we would even start the project. Could we borrow the money? What would, looking at current interest rates, what would that be over 15 years rather than 28 million all at one time? I think that would be helpful to just have sort of a down dirty, quick look at that.
Yes, I had a kind of a detailed worksheet on what our position was going to be going into the future to make sure we were going to be under the 75 million. Well, right now, at this point, we're about 60 million. So the only other borrowings that we're going to have is going to be the remaining money left over from the SRF plant loan, which was a $12 million loan. We've got about not quite $7 million to draw on that. So that's basically going to be our high water mark. So it's going to be down from there. So you figure just roughly, we're about $60 million right now in outstanding debt. So we've got $15 million, but we're going to go up another 6, and then it's downhill from there. So
yeah, approximately how much do we pay in principal a year, approximately?
It's I think with the new schedule, I hate to throw a number out exactly, but I think you're probably talking a couple million.
Yeah, 3 is what I was thinking. Okay, thanks, Bert.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner LeGree?
Bert, how much of that SRF fund are we going to use for phase 3? Or how much have we used so far for phase 3 of the wastewater upgrades?
Phase 3B should use up the rest of that SRF loan.
Okay.
It's kind of been tailored to fit within the remaining SRF funds.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? I want to remind everybody that our next mayor and commissioners meeting is this afternoon at 2 o'clock. It's a regular meeting. And then our next budget meeting, budget number 3, is on a Monday, February 7th, beginning at 2:00 p.m. Commissioners, you already have the, in your mailboxes, the information from the 4 agencies that are seeking donated funds. They were just sent by Margaret. Thank you, Margaret. And with that, I'm going to